بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening in Australia. Our guest today is one of the famous leaders. He's one of the leaders who contributed a lot to the industry, and we are glad to have him as our first leader in this show that hopefully will host leaders to talk about how passionate they are about the industry. We need some inspiration for our young professional, and the aim of the program is actually MEFMA Leaders Talk, is to talk about leadership and focus about the quality of leadership that we need to have in our industry. So thank you very much, Mr. Duncan, for being our guest today.
My pleasure, Ali, and thank you very much.
Thank you. To start the session, I would like first to have, maybe I don't know your story. We know each other for the last 10 years. Maybe we didn't have time to talk about how did you get into the FM industry? What is your background? Maybe you give us a little bit about Duncan.
Thanks, Ali. And first of all, thank you to MEFMA and the MEFMA team and Ali for the invitation to participate in this series. And I don't necessarily consider myself an appropriate person to talk on leadership, but what I am very passionate about is about facility management and how facility management can help us all, our societies and our families. And I'd like to talk about how I try to lead in that particular regard in showing people that there's perhaps a better way. I'd also like to just reach out to a number of my friends that I've seen sign on through the chat room, both from the UAE, from other parts in the Middle East, and also other parts of the world, including that from snowy Scotland. So it's good to see your names, and it's great to be able to share with you, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon. So Ali, to answer a long story with a short response, my background is one of a business background. I don't have an engineering skill. I don't have an architecture background. I don't have a trade background. I have a business degree, which was my training at university. And I first of all started working in industrial manufacturing, and then moved from industrial manufacturing into property in my late 20s. So a big shift going from industrial manufacturing of tools and lathes and equipment and cranes and all that sort of stuff, and then moving into the management of looking after the built environment. And the built environment's a very fascinating thing because it covers so many different aspects of our world. There is not one thing that we don't touch in a day that hasn't got a facility management component to it. So what I became interested in when I moved to the property industry in the middle 80s is that I was involved in a sector that was associated with the refurbishment of older buildings and making them newer buildings. And I was also associated with an area in my company that was involved in fit out for office use and other uses. So I didn't come from the construction of new buildings. I came from looking at how to make an older building work better during its lifetime, and how to fit a space out to make it usable and practical for people to get their jobs done. So that was my first introduction to what is a part of facility management. But in Australia at that time, we didn't call it facility management. It was called interiors or interior fit out and refurbishment. They were the basic words that we used. And then I started to become aware in the late 80s of a movement that was more focused centrally about how to manage everything about facilities, from soft services all the way through to hard services. So I'm talking about all the soft services that we talk about with cleaning and concierge and all those types of things, mail rooms and travel and car management, fleet management, catering, all those sorts of components, all the way through to the extreme where you're looking after very technical areas such as high-tech centres, plant and equipment, management of high-rise buildings and their safety systems, management of vertical transportation with elevators and with lifts and so on. So it went from one extreme to another, not from the simple to the complex, because they're all complex in their own way, but it went from one end to another of the spectrum. And what started to amaze me as I grew into this field of facility management is that the growing need around the world for a focus, for all these things to be delivered through a central point of responsibility. So facility management has always been delivered around the world. But generally what happened at a senior management table was that it was the things that were left over afterwards that weren't seen as being very important. Who's going to look after the cleaning contract? Who's going to look after the maintenance contract? Who's going to look after other elements of, and what happened was that the senior leadership team in a company spread the responsibility around. So what we had was decisions being made about a function that needed to happen centrally. And we had different decisions being made at different times, and it made for a chaotic response. It made for a more expensive outcome. It made for an inefficient outcome. And then finally, in the early 90s, there started to be an awareness that these things need to be considered in a central fashion. And what that came back to, and I'm very keen to mention the fact that I don't think we're involved in a thing called facility management or facilities management. I think we're involved in the management of facilities. And it's about a skill that needs to be brought to bear to lead us all to a positive outcome and an output. What's the big picture? What's the big plan? What are we trying to achieve? So what's the strategy behind why are we in this building? Why do we continue to look after it? Well, someone's got to sit back and say, what does the customer want? Well, what the customer wants, the customer in our case is called the demand organisation. So the demand organisation is the customer, the user, and we need to be engaging with them and saying, what do you need? What things do you require to do your business successfully? Now, when I first came into facilities management, it wasn't about that. It was about how hot or cold do you want it? How often do you want the place cleaned? How much money can we save out of cutting his contract back? All those sorts of things. It was about individual discussions about running individual pieces rather than a coordinated approach. So I think my background in management focus certainly helped me understand that there was a bigger picture here. There was an opportunity to think outside the box. Now, that's not to say we don't need the skills from architects and engineers and other artisans who can do this sort of work. We do need that input. But what we need to do is make sure that they understand they're part of a bigger picture, and there needs to be leadership shown within that particular arena of activity. So my growth through this area came from a function in industrial manufacturing to buildings being refurbished and being fitted out, and then moving into the area in facilities management. And in Australia, after a tour of about 3 months of having a look at facilities management around the world, I established Australia's first strategic consulting business. So we didn't do the delivery. What we did is that we advised people on what the options were, and then gave a recommendation on what we thought that demand organisation should do. So that's where I started my journey, Ali, and then it moved from there. So it moved from there into the growth of facility management in Australia, first up. And that growth happened through the establishment of the Facility Management Association of Australia, an organisation similar to MEFMA. And there are many organisations around the world now who have association contact for their members. So I was involved in the establishment of that area. And I also started a magazine in Australia that focused on facility management. So I was the first publisher of a magazine here in Australia involved in facility management. And the reason for doing that as a strategic consulting company is that I felt rather than going out and advertising to a marketplace that didn't understand what facility management was about, what I decided to do was go out and educate and share with people what facility management could do as an activity. So what we did is we highlighted a range of experiences from professionals here in Australia about how they had helped their organisations do better and do differently. So that's sort of my transition into the early part of my strategic consulting side of things, Ali.
Thank you. So which year it was when you started your consultancy?
1992.
1992. Okay, this is the year I went to school. Doing my bachelor's.
I'm sorry I'm so old.
Okay, no, it's great. I think Duncan, it's amazing how did you enter by coincidence probably from an industry manufacturing into real estate, and then slowly you liked what the scope of FM, so you moved from interiors to other streams, and you've noticed that now it is the time for me to be a messenger for the FM industry, change the people thinking, change how people are treating building. So yeah, it took you maybe probably 10 years to decide, now I want to be an advisor, I want to be a consultant, isn't it?
It did. Yeah, and I suppose my experience in that, Ali, was actually seeing demonstrated the positive outcomes associated with doing things differently. And that's why we started the association, the Professional Association in Australia. That's why I started publishing the magazine, because the only way to start getting the message out in the wider marketplace is to the benefits of what we do as professionals and industry participants is to share. And so to share information through the magazine, to share information through the association, which is exactly what MEFMA is doing and what you're doing all the time, Ali. But it's also then how do you start sharing not only on a local platform, but how do you start sharing internationally? And how do we start learning from one another? Now, I would be the first one to say that there's not one day goes past where I don't learn something new. I don't know it all. I always know to look for an opportunity and understand how things could be done differently. So my experience and opportunities as it's come via my consulting work, and part of my consulting work is involved in delivering education and learning and development courses, education. And I did that for close on to 10 years through the Middle East, running from about 1998 through to 2008, 2009, where I was in the Middle East probably once every 3 or 4 months, running across a wide range of countries, Kuwait, KSA, UAE, and many others as well, Bahrain and others. And what's been interesting is that every time I go somewhere else and I share my experiences, you encourage people to share theirs. And this isn't me, it's not about me telling people what to do. This is about me learning from other people and then pulling that into the story for everybody to be able to share and to hear. And that's really, really important, Ali. It's a two-way street. It's a two-way street. And it's so important that we learn from one another.
I agree 100%. And being a volunteer, setting up the Australian Facility Management Association, or we working as a volunteer in the Middle East FM Association will help us to learn and maybe get our head clear of how to communicate the message. Because I think the difficult part is not knowing the knowledge, is how you can simplify to the people who are not in the FM industry. And I always say, if he doesn't know how to swim, how he will appreciate you swimming, and swimming means doing FM services for him. So sometimes you have to bring the customer and explain to him in his language rather than talking PPM and spare part. And I always tell the student attending MEFMA courses, please, when you talk to your manager, don't talk about PPM. Talk about a dashboard that he expects you to talk about, which is financial, customer satisfaction. So I like the period. I think you've been very early in the Middle East doing consultancy in 1998. Of course, I know that I've noticed a change in 2006 and 2007. This is when I started going into FM. But as early as 1998, what kind of industry you went in? Is it oil and field or is it real estate? If you remember.
Oh, yeah, sure. So are you talking about the Middle East specifically or generally?
Yeah, Middle East.
Middle East, right, Middle East. Middle East was about two things, Ali. Middle East was about high-rise accommodation
Okay.
It was about, when the first time I came to the Middle East, the marina was dry. In Dubai, the marina was dry. It was still being formed. It's a long time ago. And it's been amazing to see the growth of, and I know there's growth across many countries within the Middle East, but certainly, as I think all of our audience would appreciate, the growth across Dubai has been significant. Now, when you have that growth, what happens is that you end up with an organisation that needs to know more about not only the development and the building of the buildings, but then how do you look after them? And how do you make sure they're continually okay? So the sectors I grew into, Ali, accommodation, high-rise accommodation. The next area was associated with was offices to a lesser extent, because most offices were strata title rather than necessarily being one company occupying an entire building. That's changed, I know, but nonetheless, that's the way it was. And the other significant area that I got involved in, not only in Dubai, but right the way across the Middle East, was in shopping centres. And running a shopping centre, which is such a huge focus of leisure time and enjoyment and downtime and sharing with family and being with friends. People needed to know how to run things successfully and how to do things well. And I can't name how many shopping centres there were, but that I was actively involved with, but there were many shopping centres, and I was well and truly involved with the Shopping Centre Council based out of the Middle East, and in conjunction with MEFMA, and looking to help people learn and understand and experience how other people were doing things differently around the rest of the world. So what that pointed out to me, Ali, was that you have different growths happening at different times of a market cycle around the world. So what then that led me to the way forward in saying, and being involved with an organisation called Global FM. And Global FM was first founded back in 2006. And for those around the audience, Global FM is an association or a federation of associations. It's a group of associations who come together to talk together about what they've learnt and how they're sharing with their members. Stan Mitchell, who's one of the audience members tonight, was the founding chairman of that organisation, followed by 3 other chairmen over the past years. And it's been exciting to see the way the world is starting to react and respond to the need to talk professionally in one language across the world as well. So that's really, really important. So there, not only is there a dialogue going on one-on-one between people, but now there's a professional dialogue going on between one association to another association. And I know MEFMA has been a very strong supporter of Global FM for many, many years, and MEFMA is to be congratulated for that. It continues to grow. There are 3 new members that have just joined Global FM recently, one of them being Turkey, the Turkish Facility Management Association, another one being the Panamanian Association, which was very exciting to see, and also from Egypt. It was great to see MEFMA joining Global FM as well. So we continue to grow with associations talking together, which means that their members benefit as well. As much as we can have these sorts of discussions, Ali, which are just as important as sharing and helping people understand more about what we're doing. But the growth of FM is also creating its own dilemma. And the dilemmas that it's creating, Ali, is that we have different ways of thinking about things around the world, and we have different language that we use to describe things, and there's any number of challenges. So if we're looking to share together, we need to do it in a common fashion. And the way to do that is to have standards, and we need professional standards. And I'm pleased that some years ago, in 2012, I think from memory, we had a situation where ISO decided to form and get behind the establishment of a technical committee that focused on facilities management, and that's all they do. And that technical committee is known as TC 267. And that committee is the one that has released ISO TC 267 41001, which is the management system framework for facility management. On top of that, there are a number of other standards that have been developed through that band of very sound and solid performers who have put down a series of vocabulary. They've put down a series on how to go through strategic procurement. There is a series being worked on development of a FM strategy. There's a series that is going to be published in the not too distant future about FM policy. There's a series that have been produced with regards to information management and digitization within facility management. And all of this is under the realm of facilities management practice. The good thing about standards is it's not meant to be a set of rules that make life hard for everybody. What it does is actually makes things simple, because we all talk the same language. And whether you want a job in Dubai, whether you want a job in Nigeria, whether you want a job in New Zealand, whether you want a job in China, it's discussed and it's practiced in the same manner. And that's the exciting thing, that we now have these professional standards that are being developed, that have been developed and published and continue to be developed. And I would encourage your audience to seek out more information from MEFMA and your associations, or go directly to ISO and ask the questions about TC 267 and the work that they're doing actively around the world. We now have some 49 countries that are active around the world. And Ali, I'm not sure whether the news is known, but just within our region of the world that we're talking with tonight, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has formally joined TC 267 to participate in the development of future standards and the review of existing standards. So that's really exciting news from your part of the world. Apart from the involvement of other countries, it's just fantastic to see more and more people starting to provide their input. So you ought to be, the KSA is to be congratulated, their standards body is to be congratulated, and we look forward to the engagement of KSA within TC 267. So it's encouraging to see, and we also had another couple of countries who have actively become involved as well, and it continues to grow. And there is a website at the ISO site called TC 267, and that discusses and describes more about the work that particular group are doing. So Ali, the success in the practice of FM and the opportunities in the practice of FM have now been supported with a bunch of standards that sit underneath them. So we now have, it's a bit like if you became a doctor, you could be a very good medicine man, but you couldn't go and practice your medicine man work in another country. What you would need to do is meet another country's standards. What we're suggesting is that these professional standards means that you can discuss these issues, FM issues, around the world, and know that people will understand and will be able to assist you on the way through. So it's exciting times, and I can only encourage people around the table, not just to get excited yourselves, but to go out and share that with other people, to get involved and to take a positive role in our practice and our profession of what we do on a day-to-day basis. As much as we all have lots of challenges and lots of tough times occasionally, there's some very, very good stuff coming out of the world of FM practice.
Duncan, I agree 100%. Professional standards are important. We're going back, and MEFMA has even done a session about ISO standard 2 years ago. We even, yes, hosted Mr. Stan Mitchell, and we are always trying to make our members understand that without having supported and working on a process that have standards, it's going to be very tough for you to have a process that help you to achieve your goals. I agree 100%, but I met a lot of procurement authorities. We could say the head of procurement in a certain countries. I don't want to say the name of the countries, but it's our countries, of course. And they say, listen, give me the scope. I don't want a standard. I want a scope to float. And the scope, it does not only have the, the standards, like for a doctor to practice. It has to have also the problems that the patient has. Now, nobody knows the problem that the patient has, especially if you build a project like, we have so many projects that are built in less than a year, and they are bigger projects. And, when you have legacies and you have symptom issues, you might need 2 to 3 years to understand this problem. So I think from your experience, professional standards are important, but how, as an FM professional managing a building that does not know anything about that building, how can he start putting the right strategy to apply the standard? Sorry, I'm asking this question because I see a lot of people, they are challenged by not knowing more about their buildings, not just technical, also design elements, in the building, risk in the buildings.
So Ali, that's a good question. And again, pardon me, it's not a simple one to answer because each country, each city, each company faces its own challenges. And what you have to do is make sure that the standard is relevant and has context. In other words, it's applicable. It means something to me. So the way to do that, in my opinion, is to identify, one, that I have a challenge. I'd like to do it better and I'd like to do it differently. And there's a number of questions out of those 16 that were posed before, Ali, and I've touched on some of them already, but they were to do with occupational health and safety. They were to do with procurement. They were to do with risk management. They were to do with performance. Now, if we know we've got issues in those areas, those specific topics and many others are all dealt with within the standards. I encourage you all to go and read the information that's been provided and is available to you through the ISO standards because it sets a framework. Now, when you're in management, let me come back to management. When you're in management, you need a framework. You need to know how you're going to move through a problem. So we start with the issue, we identify what it is, what are the things that we need to manage, we put a solution in place, and then we need to go back and check. So plan, do, check, and act. They're the things that we need. That's simple, that's management 101. The ISO standards are all based around that simple formula. And when you pick up the ISO standard 41001, it's based around those premises. What is the issue? How do we plan to deal with it? What am I going to do about it? And then how do I go back and review it and make changes and then come back and keep moving through? But it's a matter of being very open and honest with yourself. It's a matter of knowing you don't have all the answers and you don't necessarily know best. But what you have the opportunity here is to show true leadership. Leaders don't have all the answers. Leaders use tools to assist them to come to a solution. And they use knowledge and advice and support. And what standards will provide to you, along with MEFMA and many other people around the world, they will provide you with the tools to help you lead through a problem. Now, it's not a matter of saying, I know best and you'll do it my way, you'll hit the highway. It's a matter of saying, we need to listen to all views and we need to have our vision on one thing. The vision is the goal. And what is the best way to achieve our goal? Okay. And the thing is, it's a matter of planning for it. And yes, we might need to be cost effective and we might need to use our appropriate resources and we might have to take a bit longer than we'd like, but that's what we've got to do. And we put it into the bigger plan, and provided it's shared with people in a logical business fashion that shows a logical work through, it'll be okay. So it's a matter of saying, I don't know everything, but I have a good handbook that will help me. And I need to go and ask the experts around me who do know a little bit more than me. Right? So I don't know everything about everything. Facility managers know a little bit about a whole lot. Facility managers are not experts. And I mean, you and I have talked about this before, Ali. You're not an expert in everything, nor am I. But what you got to do is you go and ask the people what's the best way to get a message across. You and I might come up with ideas, but we might not know how to get them executed. So we go to somebody who does know how to get them executed. Now, that means being humble. One has to accept advice from other people. One has to have the humility to be able to say, I was wrong, let's try it differently. So being a leader isn't like the old days where it was the man sitting on the back of the big white Arabian horse and charging across the dunes and saying, I've got the solutions and I've got the answers. It's now a matter of saying, let me stop and listen and hear what other people have to suggest. Let me put it into a management framework, and then let's take the best option and move it forward. And what I worry about so often in many parts of the world, not just the Middle East, but in many parts of the world, is so often we think we know best, and we don't. What we've got to do is have that humility and that humbleness to be able to say, maybe someone's got a better option. But what we can apply as leaders is someone who gets the group together and challenges them and takes the good ideas and gets consensus from agreement, and then makes a decision with the final information, and then can be leading the way as to the direction that they should be going. That story can be applied to so much of what we do in our lives. So much, whether it's in our family and friends, whether it's in our societies, or whether it's at work. So we need to think first. So quite often, have you heard the saying, Ali? I know you and I, again, we've got similar views, but it's a matter of thinking first and putting the brain into gear before starting the mouth. And you know, we've got to think and listen first. This bit and this bit is most important before this starts. So I urge everybody around the table today to think about that and listen to others who are around you. But what the exciting thing is, once you do start doing that, you'll be amazed as to the talent that's around you. And they're not trying to get your job. They're not trying to say, ha ha, I told you so. They're trying to say, I have something to contribute. And sometimes they're young and they're immature and they don't necessarily understand. I understand that, but you've got to give people a chance. So leadership is not just about being out the front and driving out towards the goal. Leadership is many other skills as well. So listening to what other people, so for example, Ali, you would appreciate that the ISO standards have been put together. And I know I saw a mailing list the other day that's got something like 181 people who are a member of that group of people in TC267. Now, not all those people have something to say all the time, but it's a matter of knowing when you go to those individuals and ask them for what they're able to contribute. And that's the important thing. And I think that's really important within the society across the wider Middle East. And it might be a challenge for some, I get that. It's not the normal way of doing things in some areas and some countries, but I think it's important we start to do things differently, because that's the way it's now being practiced around the world. And in my opinion, to become a successful facilities manager means listening to lots of different things. You're getting lots of questions coming up on your chat as well, Ali. I can see that as well.
Yeah, I see this, Duncan. Thank you very much. And I think Abdulaziz wanted to ask my question, because I know a lot of people are there and trying to apply standards. But of course, applying standards to a hospital is different than applying a standard to a school, is different than applying a standard to an office. So guys, wherever you are, first you have to understand your need, building challenges, and also user need. And that is what it's about, you and how to start planning for applying the standard and how you collect information. Guys,
so the standard, so Ali, the standard is about a framework, okay?
Exactly.
Then it's a matter of how do you apply your individual expertise in the execution of the strategy that you put in place. So the strategy should be the broader picture about what you're trying to achieve. It's a matter of understanding what the school or the shopping centre or the manufacturing facility or whatever it might be, the airport, what is their strategy? What are they trying to achieve? And then it's a matter of using the framework to be able to make sure that you've covered everything off in that discussion.
Exactly. The question about preventive maintenance, guys, we are having another webinar. It's about sustainability in FM in 24th of February. So we can answer the question about preventive maintenance there. The next question I would like to, I think it's a good question. What tool we could use to balance between long-term objective and short-term objectives?
Okay. So it's an interesting question, because so often long-term and short-term might come back to how long is the CEO going to have their job? Because the next CEO is going to change a lot of the rules. So it depends on the culture of the organization. So to me, long-term can mean varying things. Investment, from an investment perspective, it could be a 10-year window. That could be long-term. But when it comes to managing a building has a life typically of 30 to 50 years. That's what they're built for. So then you need to break it down into what are my short-term actions that I need to do, what are my medium-term targets that I need to hit, and what's my long-term objectives. So again, it comes back to the specific things that you're talking about. If it was me, when I start talking about business planning, I tend to look at windows between 3 and 5 years. So my experience is 3 to 5 years, and then always have a 1-year action plan, which is constantly rolling into the future. So a 3 to 5 year is sort of probably medium to long term in some people's cycle speak. But in the cycle of a building or the built environment, 3 to 5 years is not long. However, if you don't do things appropriately within that building that time, either one, the building will stop meeting the demand organisation's needs, or secondly, it will impact on its life cycle. In other words, it will shorten its life cycle if things aren't taken care of. But that's just one element to be considered. So it is interesting, but 3 to 5 years is the sort of window I like to look at, Ali.
Okay, thank you. Asad, you are more of a consultant asking a question that you have the answer for. Please, I know you, Asad, very well. And this question, please, if you can keep the technical question to the next session about sustainability in FM, it will be in Arabic in 24th of February. But now here we are to talk about leadership. And I would like to say hi to Mohammed Laban. He is the CEO of DR FM, and he's saying hi to us. Hi, Mohammed, and thank you for joining us. We want to talk about leadership, but people think if I am not the head of the section, if I'm not the, in charge of FM, then I don't need to lead. I need to wait for instruction. And this is what we always say. If you have to lead your own way, you have to show that you're shining. You have to show that you're learning and adding value. So what do you think from your experience, Duncan? Did you see people like this? How to change attitude?
Okay, so this is about performance management. It's about performance. It's about achievement of goals. And I think everybody from the lowest paid person on a facilities team to the highest paid person, we all have performance criteria we need to meet. Now, that doesn't mean the punitive sort of delivery that most people would think about. What I'm talking about is having standards of performance. How do I know that I've achieved a success? If I go home at the end of the day, how do I know that I've had a successful day? How do I measure my own performance? Is it just because I've done what I've been told to do, or have I actually contributed to the goals of the overall FM function? The problem is, Ali, most senior leaders don't explain to everybody what the goals are. Most people don't articulate what we are trying to achieve as a team. What they do is they might share it with the top 2 or 3 direct reports, and then they just go out and say, you just make it happen. Just go out and do it whatever way you possibly can. Yeah. However, if those long-term, short-term and medium-term goals were explained in more detail to the team members, they might have a better opportunity of contributing to the success for everybody. So this is about mentoring. This is about growing talent. This is about succession planning. This is about getting people involved and helping people learn. I actually think that I came back to something before, and I think this learning component is really important. If someone says to you, I don't know how to do something, that's not a sign to fire them and get somebody else. Because if they don't know how to do it, Ali, they need to be shown or taught. Because you might find they do it far better than everybody else. But generally speaking, most people haven't been educated. They haven't been, when I say educated, they haven't been shown how to do the job. They haven't been given the right tools to do the job, nor have they been given the right time to do the job. If we actually give people that information, I think people achieve a lot more in a much shorter space of time because they think ahead, they plan themselves. Because people aren't silly. People have the capacity to deliver and innovate. And one of the biggest things that comes out of performance management and measurement is looking for innovation. And I think that innovation is so, so important. So when was the last time any of our listeners went around to their team members and said, hey, how about some new ideas? What did you do differently today that made a difference to what you do every day? And if you ask for the information, people will start to think about how they will innovate. Innovation doesn't just happen like that. It's not a matter of simply just turning on a light globe. Innovation is about allowing people to think about how something might be done differently. Because when they innovate, they will probably perform better. And if they perform better, they're going to lift the performance of the entire team. So this is really, really important, Ali. And I think that this ability to help people grow and to show them how to do things and achieve things and challenge them to, not challenge them nastily, but challenge them, how would you do it differently? Well, that's a good idea, but what would you do slightly differently? There's any number of opportunities there. So I think performance management is about challenging people to do things differently within the rules. There still has to be a set of rules. I get that. But how do you do things differently? And what might the outcome be? And sometimes you'll get magic success, and sometimes you learn from that experience and then you move on and you try something different. But to continually try to innovate will lift performance significantly. The problem is leaders typically don't ask for innovation, good leaders don't ask for innovation, and they don't share what performance they're looking for.
Yes.
Most people find out about performance when they haven't met someone's expectations. But if those expectations were never shared, what hope has someone got of achieving them? So if I ask you, if you do your job and your job was to carry 100 bricks up to the top of a hill every day, and I come out and you've only carried 95, and I say, oh, you haven't done what I told you to do. And then you might turn around to me and say, well, you told me to carry the bricks up the hill. Yes, but I wanted it done all in one day, not tomorrow. Oh, you didn't tell me that. I didn't know. So all of a sudden I've made you feel this big. You've made someone not achieve a goal for the whole team. But maybe if that person had known they were running slightly behind, or it was a very hot day, or the bricks were very heavy, or whatever, he would have gone and got a wheelbarrow, or would have asked a friend to come and give him a hand, or whatever the case may be. So innovation is part of helping people achieve. And I think far too often, and in the Middle East, we don't think outside the box. We don't think about empowering people to use their mind first and to think, and then encourage and grow. And if we do that and we educate at the same time, it will certainly help us. Ali?
Thank you, Duncan. Mr. Eid, artificial intelligence, we will talk definitely about it in next session, 24th of February. Don't forget, it's going to be about sustainability. So all these things we're going to talk about. I want to talk about people who put themselves in corner and he blames his boss. He sits in a company, and when I receive his CV, he says, I do 1, 2, 3, 4. And I said, listen, I don't want to hear what to do. What did you achieve? How did you contribute to the company's success? How did you improve as a person? Yes, you've taken MEFMA course, that's easy. But can you explain to me, how did you apply the learning into your workplace? And this is what we want people, and push people to go out of their corner and think out of the box and do saving. And once they talk the language of the manager and the top management, they will be recognized. If they are not recognized, other people will grab them and they're gonna go to another company to do what they are doing. What do you think of this advice? Am I being a little bit harsh, or?
No, I don't think you're being harsh at all, Ali, but I think it starts with the leader. So using your example where you are looking to lift performance within your team and help achieve more.
Yeah.
The first thing is, in my opinion, is that you need to have the engagement of your top management. Your top management need to understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Exactly.
So to have a plan that is accepted by top management as the way forward is really important. They have to understand what you're doing, because then what you do is you put a whole lot of other plans in place underneath that to deliver that outcome. So it's a matter of demonstrating to top management that you can support them looking like top management. they want to be successful as well. Facility management can help top management be top management, provided certain things are delivered. Now, the 41001 series, that's one of the first things that is stated within the document. It's about, there is a section on leadership within 41001. It says what a good FM leader should look to do and how they should engage with the demand organisation to do better. There's no point in having a board of directors or a top management team who don't understand what you're trying to do, because your plan has got to support their plan. And their plan has to recognise that you're going to support their plan, because you need resources, you need funding, you need all that sort of stuff. So there has to be two plans that come together and meet with one another. So for people who tell me that their bosses don't listen, the first thing I turn around and say is, do your bosses understand the value proposition that you are offering them as far as facility management is concerned? So understanding and how to promote that value proposition is really important. And again, that's a function of management. It's a function of the 41001 management series system for facilities management. And hopefully those sorts of documents will assist people in thinking it through.
Amazing, amazing answer, because this is, I think it's important for us to show the value proposition of what we do. It's not about doing 100% preventive maintenance or being a hero, attending a call out. It's about understanding how what we do contribute to the goals of the organization. For example, here in Global Village, I am the Chief Operating Officer and my Director FM. He understands that managing the risk and ensuring services are there 100%, not to disturb the main business, is one of his important tools, in addition to trying to do saving and bringing even innovative idea to generate revenue. So FM is not there just to think about maintaining system and that's it. It's all about integrating with the core business. And I always urge young people to learn. If your boss is not a mentor, look for a mentor, look for somebody who can guide you. If you have a question, these platforms will always help you to have your own plan. We say company will have a strategy, even a person should have a strategy to grow and contribute and learn and develop himself. This is my last question to you, Duncan, is about how can you put a plan for yourself to grow in FM and grow in career. People wants to grow in career, especially now with the COVID-19 impact. People entered into FM and they think it's a good place to be successful and stay at the job. But I think it's a place to create a future and a career path for you to grow and be part of a successful industry. What are the tools you need to be successful in FM?
Good question, Ali, and
I didn't prepare the questions. It's
I know
because
that's okay. So how do you prepare? One of the things that we've been trying to do at a global level through a number of organisations is to encourage young people of today to follow a dream, but to have in its focus managing and being involved in the built environment. One of the ways of doing that is that quite often people don't necessarily understand or talk about facilities management. It's not seen as being sometimes it's not seen as being a very attractive career, but it is an attractive career. And there are many senior people around the world who would attest to the fact that they love their job. And I love doing what I do, for example. And the thing is that you don't know it until you actually get there. But to talk to young people about a management career in facilities is a really important thing. So it's about management first, because people understand the concept of management. So talking about management and then relate it to facilities is really important. So, for example, if you were talking to a 16-year-old or an 18-year-old and you said, would you like to be a manager? Yeah, well, would you like to be a manager at Disneyland? Fantastic. What would I do? You'd be looking after all the rides, you'd be looking after the safety, you'd be looking after the cleaning, you'd be looking after the repairs and maintenance. You'd be looking after all that sort of stuff. Would you like to be a manager at Disneyland? Wow, that sounds fantastic. Now, then on the other hand, we might talk to a guy and say, would you like to be involved in facilities management? Oh, where about? At an amusement park. Oh, really? What's involved? Oh, you need to look after the customers. You need to do the cleaning. Doesn't sound as good, does it? We need to talk about the important role that facility managers play in our everyday life. What if you got home to your building tonight, or you got home to your apartment building or your compound or whatever the case may be, and the electricity wasn't working, or it wasn't clean, or the pool wasn't working, or the gym wasn't open, or whatever? You'd be angry. I paid my money. But the thing is that it's a facilities manager that has to look after it. And have we trained that facilities manager to meet our expectations? Have they got the resources to do the job they've got to do? Put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Now, these things take time. And it was interesting to note a comment that was just asked before by Yasser with regards to transformation time. From a building performance point of view and from a facilities point of view, I tend to find that true transformation from start through to making a difference is 12 months. Don't underestimate it. You're not going to do it in 3 weeks' time, because I'd be telling you a fib. What I will say, from start to making an impact, 1 year, to go to, oh my goodness, isn't this fantastic? Maybe 3 years. But it's a growth path, and plan your path. Have objectives along the way. We all would like to be the managing director or the CEO tomorrow. But what's the point in being the CEO at 28 when I've got the rest of my life to live and work? I'd like to be a facility manager, and I might like to be then an operations manager, and then I might like to be the COO or the CIO, information officer, or then I might like to be the CEO. Have a plan, take it easy. It's not a big rush to the top. So it's having realistic expectations. It's how we manage other people's expectations. And it's a matter of saying, and there was another comment that was just made in a moment, people normally focus on what you inspect. I get that. You know why? Because that's, if it's inspected and it's not right, they normally get a clip over the ear or a quick slap to the side of the head. If you inspect and you react that way, people won't bother trying. But if you look at something and you say, well, that's not quite what I was looking for. I was looking for this because it needs to fit into that, which fits into that, which is part of the bigger plan. So we need to explain the journey we want people to go on. Then people will start thinking differently. So all these sorts of discussions with regards to how do we grow something, you've got to have a plan. It's great to see so many countries getting involved in ISO. It's great to see so many members getting involved in MEFMA and other associations around the world. It's great to see, you know what, I hate to hear of the dreadful circumstance we've had around the world with COVID. But one of the most fantastic opportunities that comes out of it is that I get the opportunity of speaking with all of you around the table today. And that is brilliant. And that wouldn't exist without COVID, because it's only been in the last 12 months that this initiative, this ability to communicate in a broader sense has developed. So that's really important to me, Ali. It's this ability to share, it's ability to learn and demonstrate to other people. And by the way, that's the word demonstrate. Not what I say, what I do, not what I say. So you've got to have some actions behind your words. You just don't do this and then you don't help. So all these things are, I mean, it's a very broad field, but it is about having empathy. It's about knowing that you don't know all the answers, looking for people who contribute.
Agreed. Fantastic. Stan is saying goodbye, Stan. And we have another 2 minutes. You know, I'm really excited because we are trying to motivate, inspire people, make them think about their future in FM and how to contribute. And I feel it's all about how to make time. People say, I don't have time. Hey, are you crazy? How can you make time? Do you have time for your family? Do you have time? I say, it's about you. How can you mentally accept to take more responsibility, being a volunteer or being at work? It's not about working 8 hours. It's what do you do in these 8 hours? So it's for me, Duncan, just to tell everybody, I quit FM when I started in the maintenance in 1998. In 2002, I quit FM. I said, I don't want to be staying as Ali power plant all my life. I want to meet people. I am more social. I don't want to be more living with equipment and doing maintenance all my life. So I went to HSE, and my boss, He's an amazing boss. Ali, please don't change. You're an engineer. I said, please leave me. I will decide what I do. So what is your goal? I said, I want to be the CEO of this telecom company. I don't want to be the power plant engineer for all my life. So I went to HSE, but luckily with God's blessing, I went back to SM after that. For you, give us that kind of thinking that you had. You wanted to quit FM sometime and you went back. Did you have similar experience, Duncan? And what did you do to motivate yourself and go back to what you...
Okay, so I got a bit bored with things, Ali, at one point in my career, and my consulting business was doing well and all that sort of thing. But what I started to do is I started to do a whole lot more learning and development programs. So I spent a lot of time in the Middle East. I spent a lot of time in places like New Zealand, a lot of time in Southeast Asia, through Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and other places. Pardon me. And all of a sudden I found, because I was getting more back out from my attendees, from my students, I all of a sudden became enthused again. Because all of a sudden I thought, here's all these fantastic minds, not all younger, some of them older, but here's all these fantastic minds that had the opportunity to share and help me learn more. And what I was then able to do is take that learning and go and reinvigorate and re-energize myself. So to be able to listen is really important, and understand when you need that support, and just go and ask for it. It's around.
Exactly.
You know, I can only encourage those around the table or still around the table. You have an amazing resource in the team at MEFMA, in leaders on the board of MEFMA, and in people like Ali and others, many others in senior leadership roles. And please reach out to them, and look, go and have a look at LinkedIn occasionally, or go and look at other places. You will find people to connect with, and I'm also around and able to connect as well. So happy to support in whatever way I can. So yes, you need to be aware of your own state of mind. You need to be enthusiastic. The day you walk out of the office and you say, I don't want to do this anymore, perhaps it's a time to leave. But I've never done that in a long time, and I'm pleased that I haven't, because I love my work, and I enthusiastically get up every morning and go and want to do the same thing again, you know.
Thank you very much, Duncan. It was an amazing discussion. 1 hour is not enough. We need more. And we felt that Leaders Talk is important, because this is where we energize people and keep them positive and energetic, and they see the big picture rather than they see themselves just doing PPM, or, you know, we want them to see the big picture. We want them to grow and ambitious. We want them to see more leaders. And as we have more leaders, the industry will flourish more. We don't want IT industry to take over FM industry. We want to utilize technology to our benefit as an FM leaders.
Sure.
So I would like to thank you for your time today. It's really appreciated. Thank you for joining us in MEFMA Leaders Talk. And inshallah, we have more leaders to interview and to listen to. And please, everyone, join us in our next session about sustainability in FM on 24th of February. To close the session, I will leave it to you to just give a message about the key to being successful in FM in a quick few words.
I'll be very quick. No, I'll be very quick. The fact that you signed in today to listen shows me that you have a passion. You have to follow your passion in life. You have to know how to execute it increasingly with more vigor and with more enthusiasm, and most importantly, care and share with people around you. Don't forget your family, but also with your workmates, your work friends, and also look after your demand organisation and your customers. Listen to them again, see how you best can support them, and inshallah, I'll look forward to talking to you again at another time.
Thank you very much, Duncan, and we're going to end up the session. Thank you all for attending. We really appreciate your time to participate and contribute. And I am sure if you still need an answer to your question, we'll be happy to answer them by email and send it to you. Thank you all again. Thank you for MEFMA team behind the scene organizing this event. Thank you, Duncan, again, and pleasure. Enjoy your day. And together we can in the industry. Thank you all.
Bye all.
Bye.
See you.
See you.